Well, welcome everyone. My name's Donald Godfrey. I'm Associate Director for Faculty and Staff Spirituality at the University Ministry. And I want to welcome all of you. To this, the third of the faculty lecture series sponsored by University Ministry. I just want to thank a few people. First, I want to thank Julia Dowd, Francisco Jajeras, Katie Deschamps, Holly Winslow, Jennifer Ryan Hogan, and all from Bon Appetit, Kathleen in Events Management. But in a special way, I want to acknowledge Joan McGrath, who is here, former member of the Board of Trustees, whose generosity made this luncheon possible. Now, I want this luncheon to be a relaxed, enjoyable occasion. So the food is the same on both sides. The wine bar is over there. So Judy knows that you may be getting up to get some wine or food during the talk, and that is perfectly okay. I'd like now to invite Angela Banks, Associate Professor at our School of Nursing and Health Professions, to give our blessing. And after this blessing, Professor Banks will light our Advent wreath as our speaker, Dean Judith Karshmer, lights the Hanukkah. So, Angela.
Looks like some people have already started eating, so you can just pause. Let us pray. Dear Lord, I come to you this morning with a humble heart, and I'm reminded of your goodness and your mercies. I thank you, Lord, for your unspeakable love, your grace, and your comfort. Father, in the midst of crisis, you have provided peace. In times of fear and distress, you have provided protection, and I thank you. I am often amazed when you turn darkness into light, chaos into order, confusion into clarity, and weakness into strength. So, Lord, it is with thanksgiving and praise that I honor you today. We have come together in the season of Advent and the celebration of Hanukkah, and we lift up and support Dean Karshmer as she shares her journey of faith. May the message that she conveys equip us with hope for the future, power for today, and strength for tomorrow. Father, we are also grateful for the food that has been prepared. May you bless the hands that have prepared it, and may it provide nourishment and sustenance for our heart, body, and soul. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Angela and Judy light our candles. I just want to introduce Dr. Judith F. Karshmer. It gives me great pleasure. She has a lot more candles to light. Angela only has to light one candle.
It's an 8-day holiday, so we're only just getting started.
We're only beginning Advent. But I want to say a little bit about Professor Karshmer. Dean Karshmer completed her undergraduate degree in nursing at the University of Iowa, her graduate degree in advanced psychiatric mental health nursing at Rutgers, her master's in social psychology at the University of Massachusetts, and her PhD in psychology at New Mexico State University. Dean Karshmer has exercised strong, transformative leadership here at USF since her arrival in 2006. She's focused on assuring a stable undergraduate program, worked to reconfigure the Master of Science in Nursing Clinical Nurse Leader program, launched the first Doctor of Nursing program in California. In fall 2011, a Master's in Public Health program began, and a few months ago, I had the honor of giving the invocation at the commencement of our interdisciplinary PsyD program, focusing on the needs of those who are most marginal in our society. We're soon to begin a psych nursing practitioner track in the DNP program and a Master's of Science in Behavioral Science. And if that wasn't enough, in January 2014, a new health informatics program will begin, followed next summer by a clinical simulation master's degree program. So the undergraduate School of Nursing has long been a jewel in the crown of USF. However, with Judy's visionary leadership, Our school has now become nationally recognized for our graduate programs and for promoting an outstanding leadership role for the nursing profession and the health professions. Dr. Karshmer, in my view, epitomizes our USF Jesuit mission of changing the world from here, and I believe she lives out the Jesuit mission, as she says herself, by working to ensure that our graduates provide critical leadership and become architects of change, with emphasis on prevention, care for marginal communities, and universal access to cost-effective, culturally competent, high-quality care for all. It's therefore not a surprise that Dr. Karshmer was voted one of the top 100 nursing professors in 2012, is the immediate past president of the California Association of Colleges of Nursing, is a member of the American Association of Colleges of Nursing A1 Task Force on Academic Practice Partnerships, that's a mouthful, and was recently elected president of the Commission on Collegiate Nursing Education. Judy is also president of the Jesuit Council of Nursing Programs, and just in case all of that doesn't keep her awake at night, in her spare time, Judy is commissioner on the San Francisco Health Commission. Speaking personally, I know Judy as a fun person to be around, my friend and colleague. Last week over lunch with me, she told me that the moment she stops learning and enjoying what she does, she's out of here. Judy has chosen as the theme of her talk today, a personal faith journey, finding meaning in breaking the rules. I'm very grateful to Judy. Please welcome Judy Karshmer.
Everybody's supposed to relax. That doesn't seem to be me. You're all relaxed. Thanks for coming. I appreciate this. And thanks for my husband Art coming in. I told him he was sitting back in the room, so I wouldn't make eye contact. I'm nervous if I were to, so he's sitting back there. But you know, it's really a wonderful opportunity to share with you some of my experiences and what's brought me here today. But I must admit, when I saw the advertisement that says, join Dean Judith Karshmer, Dean of the School of Nursing and Health Professions, as she discusses her personal faith journey over lunch. It's really been more than just over lunch. If you think it's just going to be that, you're going to be a little bit disappointed, I'm afraid. It was last summer, months ago, that Donald came to my office and to invite me to give this third annual talk about my personal faith journey. It is the case that it's almost impossible to say no to Donald, so I said yes. And anyway, the event wasn't until December. Now that seemed a long way off. However, since that time, I have asked myself surprisingly often, what would I talk about? What would be my core message? What would a nice Jewish girl like me want to talk about? In the beginning, I had some ideas about some theme that might give me direction, the Hanukkah candle, the Advent candle, something about light and how faith lights my way. But that seemed way too late. I realized that this is way different. Preparing for a presentation or a lecture or on a topic about which I know something, like nursing or healthcare, or even at an event when I'm trying to encourage people or motivate people to do something, that this is really about a personal journey. And the question is, how much do I share? How much about me am I willing to share with you? And I didn't find middle ground for quite some time. In fact, I almost found myself avoiding Donald because I was afraid he was going to ask me what I was preparing. And I was like, didn't know. So he was terrific. Don't get me wrong. Of course, he was very helpful. But it was reflective of my usual way of operating, I realized. And that's to not talk about it, but to sort of keep it internal. So it would be private and unavailable for scrutiny. So that was my goal, actually, to keep it private and unavailable for scrutiny. So today is obviously for scrutiny. And I didn't really want to carve out time to prepare in a deliberative way or a contemplative way, because in fact, I worked to keep my thoughts about preparing a part of my everyday life, which I realized is how I actually go about my life. and that's to keep everything sort of percolating at the same time and not carve out time to focus on this and then go to this and then go to this. And I finally realized that that is very much a way that my personal faith journey has happened. It's not been a straight path. It did not focus on a goal or a direction, and it did not focus about a goal about religion. But my personal faith journey is who I am today. How I go about my life, my work, my family, and in fact, my day-to-day persona. My faith is expressed every day, in every interaction, because it is these beliefs that I hold about myself, my community, my world, and yes, my God. So that's how I came up with the theme for today, finding meaning and breaking the rules. It's really an indulgent opportunity to highlight key beliefs that I hold, and in particular, focus on those that I have reframed as part of my faith journey. And how fitting that I see my faith journey as one link to breaking the rules. Sort of a riff on founding of USF as an act of disobedience by the Jesuits and San Francisco. Thanks to Donald. And the recent remarks by Pope Francis in which he described obsession with rules and doctrine and admonished the church to cast away those rules that stand in the way of true connecting with the needs of others. So who knew a nice Jewish girl like me would have this breaking the rules, disobedience notion so consonant with the Jesuit fathers? So as you are here today, it's not really about broken rules, but in fact, more about conventional wisdom, ways I was taught to make sense out of the world that didn't work for me. And as a result, became the norms that I challenged and got me here today. So in no particular order, what are those rules? Well, the first one is keep your personal and professional life separate. Now, this is a mantra that I've heard over and over again. As a nurse, we were taught we shouldn't take our work home with us. We were taught, by the same token, the message was leave your family matters out of the workday. Clearly, I never followed that advice, or I wouldn't be standing here in front of you telling my work family about my personal life. In fact, it became clear to me that work and home are not separate. This lesson learned became clear in my work as a therapist. Remember, I'm a nurse, but I'm not the kind of nurse you usually think about. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and my practice always was talking to people. So this is what I like to do. I talk to people. Oh, and sometimes listen to them. And it became... My kids, as Art used to describe, our kids used to describe me as the kind of nurse who puts Band-Aids on brains. As I worked with patients, I realized that not only did I have to think through what they were telling me and frame it from an academic perspective, but that my reactions to their situations, their concerns, were very important in the therapeutic process. And I had to learn to trust that my reactions were formed by the whole of me, not my knowledge, not only my knowledge, but my experiences, both professionally and personally. Just as we were urged to focus on our patients' thoughts and feelings, I took the bold step to also focus on my own and believe that they were important and an important part of the therapeutic process. As it turns out, I am the same person, whether I'm at home or with patients or with colleagues or with students. Perhaps I have different goals or concerns and different issues, but I work hard to bleed home to school and school to home. And I invite my colleagues and families to do the same. The great upside of this is I don't have to spend any time or effort compartmentalizing my life. It's one complicated, wholly rich fabric. And living where we do, so close to campus, makes it even easier. So my rule is work to keep your personal and professional lives integrated. Now, the next conventional wisdom is if you don't know where you're going, you'll never get there. Well, for me, this has not been the case in regards to my personal faith journey. It's hard enough to know where I am to spend much time figuring out where I'm going. So, since I grew up as a Christian, Lutheran to be exact, I always assumed that my faith, my religion, would remain constant. Why not? It was not a goal to actualize my faith, to rethink it, but in spite of that, it happened and I changed. I had no goal to reach, but with evolving life experiences, new knowledge, and that pesky self-assessment and process of self-reflection, I began to realize that there are lots of paths to lots of goals, and not one of them is necessarily right. And options continue to come available. Only if you're sure about where you're going, only if you're sure that you don't care where you're going, can you take advantage of what comes along the way. I became sure that I knew far less about truth and moved to a world of as many shades of gray, and not that many kinds of shades of gray. I had no goal to become a Jew, but it happened, and even though I didn't know where I was going, I'm here. So my rule, not knowing where you're going, allows you to be and not worry about becoming. Okay, so my next rule. So there is a right and a wrong way. People keep telling me that all the time. So yes, you did hear correctly. I grew up a Christian in a basic Midwest family. I went to church every Sunday. I went to religious school on Wednesday evening. When I was in junior high school, I'm so old that we called it junior high school then. We lived in the big city of Des Moines, and when my dad decided to move back to his childhood hometown to pursue his dream of owning his own business, we moved to this town of about 8,000 people, Eldora. Not that you need to remember the name, but it's the name of my hometown. And most of the economy in this town is based on farming. It's got a courthouse in the middle of the square. It's except there are no businesses there anymore, but it was cute when I lived there. Most of the people who lived there were one generation removed from Germany. And they were farmers, and they were almost all Lutherans. So everybody knew everybody's business. In my town, we had a large Lutheran church, and a smallish Methodist church, and a smallish Presbyterian church, and a Baptist church. Oh, and there was a Catholic parish. It was exotic because they didn't even call it a church. They called it a parish. And believe me, there was no synagogue. My mother does say, though, that she thinks the Lutholds, who owned the clothing store, might have been Jewish. So after my disappointment of moving away from the big city of Des Moines wore off, and I ended up loving this small town. It was a safe and supportive environment. I was a typical girl of the 60s, and when I contemplated what I wanted to do when I grew up, I had no idea, except the choices seemed to be teacher and nurse. That was pretty much all I knew that was out there. So, and of course, marriage was part of that. There was never any doubt. I was going to get married, I was going to have kids. Now, when you're a teenage girl in the middle of the Midwest, you spend a lot of time dreaming about what that life is going to be like. You're not, unless you grew up in the 60s in the Midwest, you maybe not did that. But we spent a lot of our emotional time and effort thinking about who was that dream person, that dream guy. And I remember the most outrageous thought was, what if you fell in love with a Catholic? This was like, oh my God. So being right in my world then was being Lutheran. Oh, and not just Lutheran, Missouri Synod Lutheran, which was a big deal. And when my older sister got married, her husband-to-be was Methodist, and he had to convert before they got married. Oh, and my brother's wife was Church of Christ, and she had to convert. So it seemed pretty obvious to me that this must be the right way. But college was, as one would hope, a wonderfully affirming and mind-bending, and not mind-bending in the 60s like you're thinking. It was an opportunity to rethink religion, spirituality, faith, and how it impacted me and who I was. And this led to a wonderful lack of clarity. And it was this broad perspective and this lack of clarity that I realized that there was not a right way, and obviously not a wrong way. And so this provided an inclusive base that helped me feel comfortable and supported me in stepping out of knowing and believing that I was supposed to live in a prescribed right way, and actually begin to doubt if there was anybody who was so sure-fired right all the time. So my rule is there are lots of right ways. So the next one of my personal faves, and my colleagues from the School of Nursing and Health Professions share it all the time, is that change is, well, the adage is change is difficult. I mean, how many times do you hear that? Oh my God, change is difficult. I don't believe that. And I had the good fortune of securing funding for graduate school upon completion of my undergraduate degree at Iowa, and found myself at Rutgers in New Jersey. It's a place I'd never been before. I literally never been there, got off the plane. And here I was just out of college, brand new, in a new place. I was so scared and so excited. The vast majority of my classmates and my friends from my hometown stayed in Iowa, perhaps in a new town, but they stayed close. Remember, I had no reason to move on. I had a great gig going in Iowa, but I was ready for a challenge and a change. And change was exotic, and I couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The clarion call that change is hard just didn't wash. During my time in college, Martin Luther King, RFK had all been assassinated. Vietnam was going on. It had disintegrated. The pulp culture was intruding our everyday life. Changes happened, and they happened. And I changed with it. When I was in graduate school, I discovered that change was going on around me, that it was quite easy. It was only when I tried to prevent from changing that things got hard. And it became the premise that change is easy. It's keeping the status quo that's so hard. So this stance has profoundly affected my faith journey. Continuous change is constant and indeed easy. When I was first dating Art, I introduced him to my grandmother. She was about 70 at the time, and certainly a product of her generation. When I explained to her that he was Jewish, her only comment was, well, at least he's not Baptist. She was She was very annoyed with the Baptists because her ladies' aid group had asked them to join to do a community project and they wouldn't do it. So she was very annoyed. But it was actually her way of saying, it's okay, move on, it's okay. She was so able to not make a big deal out of it that you don't need to hold on to the past. And she was able to see her world, that her world was profoundly different, that the world today was profoundly different from when she was a girl, and that it would most likely be profoundly different when I was her age, which I'm not yet. Indeed, if I were to give this talk tomorrow or next week or next year, it'd be different because things change. So my rule is change is easy. It's keeping the status quo that's so darn hard. The next one is don't overextend yourself. Just say no. Okay. This has been, continues to be a classic piece of advice. We need to make sure to say no, to make sure that we don't spread ourselves too thin. I have found that when I do this, two things happen. I encourage other people around me to say no, and I'm no longer at the table. So many years ago, as I was at a meeting, and the question was asked, who would take minutes? And we all put our heads down. Didn't make eye contact with the question asker. When one of the participants said, I'd be happy to do that. And I sat up and I looked at her and I said, wow, not only is she willing, but she's doing it with a happy heart. It made me want to help her. What can I do? All of a sudden, I was interested in her and in the topic. I thought that was a really, really important lesson. Very shortly after that, I was at a faculty meeting, and we were talking about ideas for a new program for mentoring at-risk students. All the other faculty said it was a good idea, and they supported the work, but they could not participate in the plan. I used the lesson learned and said, I'll do that. And not only did the people rally and help me, I was the one that actually got to have a say in the way the program was designed. And I got the money because there was funding attached to it. So the lesson was, if you say yes, it encourages other people to say yes, and you get to have a say in what happens. So saying yes kept me at the table, and if you say no, you're excused and you're no longer part of the decision. So I'm glad I did not follow this rule. I have lots of irons in the fire, but I have lots of support from my family and friends here today. So my rule, just say yes. The next one, I have several of them. If it's not broken, don't fix it. So my life was not broken. It was a really pretty good life. It was fine. I was in graduate school. I truly believed that I had a job in my future. I actually thought I had a career. I thought, I can do this. And the accepted philosophy would suggest, why make any exotic changes? And enter stage right Art, who lived across the hall in our apartment building. He had a job. It was a good deal. And a car. And the car had leather seats. Not that I'm that kind of a girl, but he had a dog, who I liked very much, and he was a really nice guy. So we started dating, and over dinner one night we were talking about our undergraduate days and our experiences with fraternities and sororities. I was a sorority girl. And Art mentioned that he was a Phi Eph. I said, oh my God, that's a Jewish fraternity. And I said, are you Jewish? And he said, yes. I said, I'm not. And he said, I knew that. And I didn't understand, how would he know that? How would you know that I'm not? So that was so amazing. So I have now learned that there are these, this Jewish ability to read implicit cues that scream Jewish. And artists taught me, I'm pretty good at it, not as good as he is, but over the years I've sort of learned that implicit rule. So what I did know, that I was still sorting out the fact that when I was in New Jersey, people asked me what I was. The options were Italian and Catholic and Polish or Jewish or something, and I didn't know what to say. So I often would say, well, I'm Iowan. Very unacceptable. So we started dating and walked into this and realized that we were from two very different cultures, two very different religions, and we fell in love. Much to the chagrin of our 1970s families, except my grandmother. Remember, that was forever ago, and this was something that was really not so accepted. We have been married really a long time. But we ended up deciding to get married. And in fact, what centered us both, that was the meeting of our value systems that had at their core family, social justice. Art thought it was a Jewish value. I thought it was a Lutheran value. Who knew it was really a Jesuit value? But the responsibility for others, education, and productivity. It was our differences that made us similar. So we were married by justice of the peace on neutral territory and started our lives together. And that worked. Nothing was broken, nothing needed fixing. So what would cause a nice Lutheran girl to make the religious shift and transform into a nice Jewish girl? Well, that would be love. And there are many, many reasons to make a decision, and I can't think of anyone better than that. So we decided that we had been married about 3 years, and we were going to start a family. That was also part of the, assume you're going to have kids. And that became the religion trigger. Ooh, what are we going to do? What are we going to have this child? So it was the case that religion was very important to me. If it hadn't been, it would have been no big deal. I would have just continued my life, and Art would have continued his, and we would have had this family. But because it was important, my situation of being Lutheran and Art being Jewish did matter. So we started on a year of classes. And the deal was that both of us had to go to the Judaism classes. Part of the deal that he actually participated, and during this entire year, the rabbi kept saying, "Are you sure you want to do this?" His job was to discourage me over and over again. And during this time, Art often would say, I'm really learning a lot. This was a very, interesting thing. So after this year-long course of us growing together, we had our daughter Ilana during this year of discernment. And when she was 3 months old is when the trigger was that the Judaism conversion took place. So she had to convert as well, because she was born of a non-Jewish mother. We both went to the ritual mikveh, and we both were interviewed by the council of rabbis, still trying to discourage us. And Art actually took Ilana in, and the conversation was around if she cried, that meant she really wanted to do it. So, for me, the actual shift was from one religion to another, but it was not a shift in faith. In fact, Judaism helped me actualize a faith in God and my fellow humans that, in a way that encouraged questioning with no right answers, belief in the good of others, and in my ability to have an impact. In fact, the very nature of the no right answer is a very Jewish notion. Because we took this journey together as a couple and a family, we were able to keep any of our family customs, but we could actively adopt new ones that would be ours. When we lived in Israel, Art was doing a postdoc there, we had the occasion to have Hanukkah dinner with several friends over the course of the Hanukkah season. And we decided to choose a new latke recipe. Now, that may seem like a big deal, but those of you who had our latkes, no, that was a good choice. We decided on a new, not a familial latke recipe, but our own latke recipe, which is now the recipe that we use. For years, Art arranged communal seders with friends and colleagues. And instead of the traditional lamb, we chose turkey. because we like turkey and we didn't want lamb. But for the Seder plate, if you are familiar with it, you have to show the symbols of the Seder, and one of them is the Paschal lamb bone. So forever, we use the turkey neck. So in our family, the turkey neck is a Paschal lamb bone. One year, our son was home from college. He's a smart kid. He was home from college for Thanksgiving, and he said, "Mom, why do you have a Paschal lamb bone?" Not so smart. He went to Berkeley. What can you say? Had he come to USF, he would have gotten it. Okay. So, Viola, I have been a Jew longer than I was a Christian, and all of it as an adult. When I was a new Jew, any time the topic of religion came up, I explained I was a convert. After about 20 years, I would mention it if somebody asked. Now that I've been one for over 35 years, it doesn't even occur to me to mention it, except obviously when I'm talking about a personal faith journey. What was I thinking? So my rule, keep fixing it, keep getting it better. Always, always plan, ready, aim, fire. That is another rule you're out there. Always, always plan, and make sure you ready, aim, fire. At one time, I thought that the prime directive was to plan, plan, plan. As a young academic, wife, and mother, I thought I had to plan before taking any step. When I came to realize that sometimes you just have to go ahead and fire, and that perfects your aim, and finally you can ready yourself. I have done this for a long time, and I've had to cover up the approach as so other people wouldn't think I was doing that. So I pretended to have a good rationale. And then, happily, I moved to San Francisco and realized that entrepreneurs are valued for doing that. And so I have been able to justify this approach by taking a page from the Entrepreneurial Handbook that basically says, fire, aim, ready. That this gives a perspective that allows you to, not me anyway, not to feel guilty about getting to the point that's good enough, and fire, and then learn from that in order to take better aim and to better ready yourself. So my rule, fire, aim, ready. I have a last couple of broken rules to share. Make a decision. This is, and don't change your mind. Once you decide something, hold it. This is, as you're growing up as a novice in the academic world, you want to really look like you know what you're talking about. So, you make a decision, and then in spite of conflicting evidence, you hang on to that. Because if you changed your mind, you'd look like a num-num. You'd look like you're wishy-washy. And the last thing a faculty member ever wants to be thought of is, oh, you gave in, you whatever. As it happens, this leads the way to more protracted arguments. And when you realize that you privately don't even believe yourself, chances are you should have changed your mind. So it is often that when we make a decision that you don't change your mind, that you realize you end up with consequences that you could have prevented. So my rule is change your mind and do it often. Effective family life requires stability and status quo. Kids should have security and not be schlepped around. I had the outrageous good fortune of having a husband, that would be Art, who made opportunities for us to travel abroad as a family. It meant that we would pick up and move our kids from the security and safety of our conventional lives to on several occasions living in Europe. We moved our kids from U.S. schools to those abroad. Our daughter did preschool in Israel, started kindergarten in New York, England, and our son in Germany. 2 other years we lived in Germany and the UK, and they changed schools several times. As a result, we spent more time together as a family than 4 human beings would possibly do if they'd stayed in the United States in the same hometown. When you're in a foreign country and you don't know anyone, you learn to depend and spend time with one another. So my rule, families need to be together. Who cares where? I, of course, did some library work about Catholic Jewish identity, so I might weave that into my talk today. But it really wasn't necessary because I already have experienced the inclusivity and the nurturing priority that makes USF what it is. Although this may be a bit crazy, they may be a little bit crazy because why else would they have asked someone like me with a checkered background to present today? But it is the case that the notion of discernment has a profound impact on my personal faith journey. I, of course, went right to the source, Wikipedia, to get a good definition of discernment. It's a pretty good one, actually. And their explanation is about discernment rooted in the understanding that God is ever at work in one's life, inviting, directing, guiding, drawing one into the fullness of life. Its central action is reflection on ordinary events of one's life. It presupposes an ability to reflect on the ordinary events of one's life, a habit of personal prayer, self-knowledge, knowledge of one's deepest desires, and openness to God's direction and guidance. Discernment is a prayerful pondering or mulling over the choices a person wishes to consider. In discernment, a person's focus should be on a quiet attentiveness to God and sensing rather than thinking, something I like to do. Not the not thinking part. His goal is to understand the choices in the heart and to see them, as it were, as God might see them. In one sense, there is no limit to how long you might continue with this discernment as a repetitive process. Who knew that my daily Lutheran, come Jewish, way of connecting with God was a Jesuit tenet? It was my mom who taught me to say my prayers every night, to use prayer, or as she said, little chats with God, as a way to find order out of day-to-day life. I did do a lot of bargain prayers when I was younger. I don't know about you, but if you do, I'll do kind of thing. But it seemed to be, it was part of I did that today, by the way. Help me get through this. And then I'll be a much better person tomorrow. So it was my mother, my wonderful Lutheran mom, who taught me the process of discernment. Then when I did the work to be a Jew, that was foundational. And the thinking conversation with God was more than sensing, but is crucial to the Talmudic discussion orientation. That arguing is good, arguing advances discernment, and learning that a faith journey is not private, but rather a relational experience. So I invite you now to share your personal faith journey at your table. That's it, guys. So the plan really was that you have a chance to sort of talk amongst each other, react. I'm happy to also, if you have any comments you want to share. Donald said we'd play this by ear, this part by ear. We're playing it by ear. He said, we'll see, do they want to talk to each other? Do they want to talk to you?
Do you want to give them some time to talk a little?
Sure.
And then come back and comments and questions? Yeah. 10 minutes. And to get some more food also, and wine. Great.
By your being vulnerable and sharing your story allows us, it's not, the whole point of this lecture series is not to be right or wrong, it's actually to engage, to allow us to reflect on our own journeys and experience and be free to share them with each other, because we talk about everything else except, and that's why it is hard to talk about these things, but you gave us permission to do it today, so thank you for that. But I just wanted, any questions, comments, thoughts? Oh, thank you. And we have a microphone if anyone wants to use it.
Rebuttal.
Art and Julia are talking.
I'd like to hear your rebuttal.
You need a microphone?
Family life again after we do
Smart man.
Every Jewish husband knows the two most important words in married life. Yes, sir. In this case, I have no, you have nothing to add.
Anybody else want to? There must be some other thoughts.
The idea of doubt, sorry.
Okay, well
Doubt
then Joan
and-
after you. Yes, go ahead,
Doubt and
Teresa.
questioning. And
Can everybody
being-
hear Teresa?
Yes. And being invited to do so really resonated with me. This was not something, raised as a Roman Catholic, I was encouraged to do. I don't know about anybody else, but it was not even to be discussed. But I remember sitting at the dining room table with my parents and saying, I don't feel like I need to go to confession every Saturday evening. Well, why not? Because I don't think I'm that bad. Even back then, I was like, this doesn't sound right. But anyway.
I always wanted to be able to confess sometimes. I thought there might be something in this that made me sort of magically felt better. You know, I kept saying, maybe somebody could do that for me.
Personally, I never did.
Joan, do you want a microphone?
No, I don't. I'll stand up so you can hear me. First of all, I want to thank you for turning conventional wisdom on its head. I think that we are filled with these conventions, our brains are, that we live by, and we are not aware that we are living by them. And one of the messages I got from you tucked in there was when you said something about don't worry about becoming, but rather just being. And it occurred to me, because my basic question was, you know, how do I become aware of all the little things that I live by that aren't necessarily so, you know? And maybe that's the answer that you gave in the heart of your talk about just being, because if you're present, maybe I guess you'll see, you know, some of the limiting things. I'm at the retirement age, and if you knew the number of people who say to me, "What's the matter? Don't you know how to say no?" just because I'm tired and I'm doing all these things. Yes, I'll volunteer to do this. I'm one of those people who used to take notes in meetings too. Now I do I look the other way now. Somebody else who will do that. But I nonetheless, you know, I want to thank you for that. That was just delightful to hear. And I again want to join everybody else, I'm sure, and thank you for being personal. We are fearful to be too personal publicly about our faith. And I think that you serve us beautifully. You did that today. And it made me realize sometimes that I'm not so, you know, out there talking about my own faith journey. So thank you for that, Judy. I really appreciate what you do for USF. Thank you.
I'll use my classroom voice. So I want to speak for the moment on behalf of your faculty and staff colleagues. And I feel like I need to say to you in public that it is sometimes really crazy making to work with you. It's fun, it's exhilarating, and I think that I hopefully speak for everyone in saying that we always, always, always feel 200% supported. Whatever it is, whatever crazy idea, whatever issue that is huge for us, in talking through it, I think we all feel, is that true? We all feel like you hear us, you support us, and you push us and challenge us to be even better. Soon after Judy came, I can't even remember what it was. We disagreed vehemently about something, and we were sort of going back and forth, and finally Judy sort of put her hands down and said, "You know what?" She said, "You care about this a lot more than I do, so we'll do it your way." And that was the end of it. We never spoke of it again. There was no, I'm taking names or anything, but that was just like, oh, I can spread my wings and go. So thank you for making our lives really exciting, but also in just being such a tangible support for us in learning to find our place too. So thank you.
That's a good thing to say. I like that one. I remember that. Good.
I just want to say something about confession. You know, I grew up Roman Catholic, and it's not as easy as you think. It is more exciting when you just go into the passage and you have your first confession and your first communion. It's exciting. It's like, you know, that's the thing you wait for. And after you go through that passage, and now you have to go to confession every week, because we had to go to church every Sunday. I grew up in Catholic church, and on Thursday you had to go to confession before you could have communion on Sunday. And my friends and I, our twin, we didn't know what other sins that we could confess to. So you had to tell the priest something. You had to confess to something. So we had to check and see which priest we were going to get that we had to confess to. And then we had to remember what confession that we could say to that other one. We had a I took a quarter from my mother's purse. And so just to debunk the story about confession when you were younger. When you get older, it's become more meaningful. But
Nice save.
So, that's my story about confession from when I was a tween.
I just have one last challenge here. It was absolutely wonderful. I took 2 pages of notes. Oh, wow. But I'm challenging you because this word should go beyond this room. Now, I'd love to see you write this up. Contrary in leadership, and put it out there and let people kind of think about it. It needs to be heard, and you did it beautifully. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice comments. I really appreciate it. It is sort of funny. The first time I was typing and I wrote down the word God. Oh, do we say that out loud? I mean, I had this funny feeling, and then I wrote Jesus. And it was funny, in sort of this academic world. It was a funny thing. And then, sort of, as I said, trying to decide what I was how could I bare my soul and not, to be honest, but also not to overindulge myself because so. Having said that, I think that one of the things that was most easy was that I know so many of you and you were here to be supportive. And that made all the difference to sort of open up. And I know that everybody in the school got rally pad and and Margot said, oh, you have to go up there, but thank you for coming. It really makes a huge difference to have people that you're talking to and you think they're going to err on the side of forgiveness. So
I just wanted to say that I grew up as Southern Baptist and converted to Judaism too. And talk about a paradigm shift. That was a real paradigm shift. But you kind of, look for the similarities rather than the differences. And that's one of the things that I found here at USF is, acceptance and look for the similarities, not the differences. And that is that beautiful, intersection of, religion and academia and just being part of something. It's very, very rich fabric. We're all pieces of a quilt that kind of comes together. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
we got to light candles last night at our Hanukkah. Yes. There are 3 of us.
I love the fact that you said that you changed religions, but you didn't change your faith, because I think that's really important. And I love what you just said about the fact that you, when you said, when you wrote down God or Jesus, and it was like, and I think that's really important because I think as people who have faith, it's okay to have your own opinion about how you believe. And I think in deference to wanting to be respectful to everyone, we neglect to speak what we believe because we don't want to offend anyone. But I think if we all show respect for one another, we can still speak what we believe. And I think it's important to do that. It's important to speak your faith. It's important for me to be able to be in an atmosphere where I can speak my faith. While still understanding that there are people who might not believe the same way I do, and I can totally respect them. It's not just true for faith, it's true for all kinds of situations. But so I really, really like that you weren't afraid to do that.
And I think USF helps give us that sort of structure to do that. I mean, that's what I felt here.
I do. Too.
Thank you.
On that note, I want to acknowledge the work of University Ministry, Julia and Donald and your colleagues, to sort of elevate the conversations that we've had recently and in the last couple of years, to allow this kind of participation with colleagues, to talk about mission and values, to talk about faith, to go on a spiritual walk, I mean, all of the things that you're doing. So thank you, University Ministry, for helping us be more